Good afternoon, everyone. Hi, this is Jana. I hope you are all comfortable by your screens. You have a cup of coffee or tea after lunch here in Singapore. Let's wait for a few more seconds. Let me do some introductions. We are still people dialing in. I see we have 67 people who joined in. We had over 400 registrations, so it's exciting to see that the topic we will be talking about is the right topic to open up in our first webinar of the year. My name is Jana, and I am a co-founder of She Loves Data and Meiro. We do this workshop in collaboration with our partners. We will have more introductions a little later on. She Loves Data is Meiro's nonprofit arm where we teach women about tech and data. And you might be wondering that we have a marketing topic today. Why She Loves Data, which should be all about tech and data, is a part of our collaboration partner today, is because around 20% of our community members, we have around 25,000 of them in 16 countries around the world. They are actually coming from marketing, any parts, digital marketing, comms, PR, content. And what we realized in the last few years is that marketing actually stopped being only the creative field, but it went and ventured more into a technology field. So that's why we invited as well our community members. So welcome everyone who's here from She Loves Data, and welcome everyone who registered. I have a great pleasure to introduce our host today, Gavin Floyd, our partner, who's gonna be introducing you to our agenda and our program. So relax, have tea, let us know in the chat where you are dialing from. This is again Jana from Singapore. I'm wishing you a good webinar. Gavin, this is back to you.
Thank you, Jana, that lovely introduction. And thanks everyone for taking the time to join us this lovely Thursday afternoon. Interesting fact, actually, which is very relevant to today's chat. This exactly one year ago today, it was actually when Google announced that they'll be killing off the third-party cookie or phasing it out. It was actually announced on the Chromium blog by the director of engineering. So quite topical, it seems. I actually found out last night when I was perusing. So that's great. So happy announcement day, everyone. So yeah, what we're going to do how today is going to work. What we're going to do is we're going to have a talk from Gabby Go, who's the editor for APAC WARC, and she's going to talk about some insights about cookies and how that will affect marketing from WARC's Marketers Toolkit. So we're looking forward to that. So Gabby, I'm going to hand over to you. Hi there, Gabby. How are you doing?
Good, actually. Already have my second cup of coffee at hand, so wow. I should be quite prepared for this presentation.
Amazing. Thank you very much for joining us and looking forward to hearing your insights.
All right, great. Let me just share my screen. All right. So, hi, everyone. And of course, thank you to Meiro and She Loves Data for the invitation to present at today's webinar. As Gavin mentioned, my name is Gabby Go, and I am the Asia editor for WARC. So just briefly, for those unfamiliar with WARC, we are a subscription-based knowledge platform for marketers with a focus on enabling effective marketing. Now, if you're wondering what WARC stands for, it stands for World Advertising Research Center, but I must confess, no one has called us that in about the last 20, 25 years or so. It's a little like KFC these days, right? So towards the end of every year, we release a report called the Marketers Toolkit. And it's a guide to the trends and challenges of the coming year. It is our largest undertaking annually, and this latest edition, the 10th one in fact, features insights from more than 20 senior marketers from around the world and survey data from more than 1,000 marketing industry professionals. I'm pleased as Asia editor, naturally, to share that half the marketers interviewed for this report and 48% of total survey respondents come from the APAC region, which means that we have a healthy sample base to share the APAC slice of our results with you today. And in line with the theme of today's webinar, I'll also be taking you through one of the chapters from the Toolkit report, which looks at how brands are navigating the shift towards the closed web. So let's get some of the obvious out of the way. No real surprise, really, that the industry globally felt that there was little impact from the Facebook boycott that took place last year. And of course, it's even less surprised that that level of empathy is more pronounced in a market like China, where Facebook factors in very little in daily marketing considerations. What you see in this chart is the breakout of responses from first APAC-only respondents, then a drill down to just China and contrasted with the global numbers. To Facebook or not Facebook aside, we are seeing increasing support from the industry for greater regulation of big tech. In fact, APAC skews higher on this front, with 89% of respondents agreeing or strongly agreeing with this point, compared to 83% globally. This has been an issue that has been brewing for the last few years, and the developments of 2020 have only compounded the need for better regulation and oversight. The end of third-party cookies by 2022, as decreed by Google, alongside increasing privacy regulations and the COVID-19 pandemic, has now concentrated power and wealth in the hands of a few major platforms. And while there are growing calls for big tech players to be broken up, operational realities will not change that quickly. Initiatives such as the IAB's Project React may one day usher in a privacy-compliant universal ID to replace the cookie, but such technology is unlikely to roll out in 2021. If anything, marketers are left with having to navigate the now while preparing for a future dictated by yet unknown technology innovations and the details of a regulatory catch-up. Brands have to deal with the current reality of being even more dependent on walled gardens for customer data and insights, thanks to the now outsized role that these platforms play in both personal and business lives. And it is an issue that can't be addressed at the last minute. But despite knowing that the end is near, many brands are still without plans in place for reaching consumers in a post-cookie environment. As you can see here, only 34% of total survey respondents globally agree or strongly agree that brands they serve are prepared for life after the cookie. Things are a little better if you drill down to just APAC respondents, as it stands a little higher at 36%, while you look at just China alone, it's even higher at 40%. What this suggests is a slightly lower focus on cookie-based web tracking, given the dominance of mobile usage and app ecosystems in this part of the world. It is more so the potential of device IDs and in-app tracking that takes up more of marketer attention when it comes to future-proofing. But while APAC may seem a little more prepared for a cookieless future, the fact remains that at least 60% of respondents are not as prepared as they'd like. And to reference Mark Wagnum from MediaLink here, which is a WARC sister company, weeding an entire industry off such a significant addiction will take some serious doing. What this means is that marketers are now finding themselves returning to some fundamental concepts. Context is once again king. And as marketers try to keep up with platforms, understand how brands fit in ad-free environments, and simplifying their tech stacks just for sanity's sake, the good news is that data-led marketing is becoming more sophisticated and no longer depends on following consumers around the internet, mainly because such tactics will be harder to implement in a post-cookie environment. For many advertisers, particularly those that have responded to the pandemic by selling directly to consumers, the demise of third-party cookies means a renewed focus on the collection of first-party data. Across APAC, 63% of respondents agree or strongly agree that they have a data collection strategy in place, higher in fact than the global percentage of 57%, suggesting that growing numbers of advertisers in this region believe that they must gain a stronger grip on customer information in order to maintain content relevancy in a post-cookie media landscape. Brands now stand at a crossroads with some hard decisions that need to be made. For some brands, especially those selling consumer packaged goods, it may not be worth the effort at all to try and better the digital platforms and the costly science of data-led personalization. For these marketers, the goal will be to develop a strategy for winning within marketplace ecosystems like Amazon and Alibaba. Either way, marketers will have to work harder to maintain an objective and platform agnostic view of the market. And this struggle only heightens the ongoing quest to measure impact. As you can see, client-side marketers surveyed for this are using a variety of measurement systems to isolate the impact of their marketing investment. In APAC, brand lift studies are the most popular, followed by marketing mix modeling and attribution modeling. While in China, it's a little different, with mix modeling topping the list, followed by brand lift studies. And perhaps more interestingly, 32% say they don't use modeling at all. The fact is that advertisers are still paying for an opportunity to see rather than an actual human view. Planning around viewability is pointless if those target audiences are not paying attention. And it's a realization which may just shape it for good. A growing body of research already shows that attention metrics are a better predictor of actual sales outcomes than viewability alone. And those attention metrics can be fused with other data for deeper and more balanced analysis. In the coming year, we anticipate renewed focus on attention measurement with a possible overhaul of existing media planning processes as industry starts to incorporate new ways of comparing channels and formats in order to allow brands to optimize investment further. But as marketers map out their strategies for a post-cookie world by tracking developments coming in from platforms, media owners, and technology providers, it's also important to remember to not lose sight of the bigger picture, the mission that defines the marketing function. To quote Brent Smart from IAG in Australia, precious marketing dollars should be spent on what touches the consumer, as that's what drives sales and builds brands. And that is the starting point that we should all be working backwards from. And with that, I hope I've set the scene for the discussion for today's webinar. If you'd like to download a copy of the presentation, please do scan the QR code, another little piece of technology that has been revived thanks to the pandemic, or feel free to drop us a line at the emails listed there. And with that, thank you so much for your time and attention. Back over to you, Gavin.
Thanks, Gabby. That was truly amazing. Amazing. Cheers. Okay, so just before we dive into the panel, so what we're doing is we're going to I'll get the panel to introduce themselves one by one. As the panel's going, please feel free to pop in any questions you've got into the Q&A section, not the chat section if possible. And also, if you've got any questions for Gabby about her presentation, chuck them in as well. And we can ask them of Gabby. Okay, right, now onto the panel. So we've got an amazing lineup, some real titans of industry from all corners of the ecosystem, from publishers to agencies to tech or brand side, albeit B2B brand side. So first of all, we've got Devendra Shivher, who's the head of engineering at SPH. Dev, do you want to do a quick introduction, sir?
Hey, thanks, Gavin. Good afternoon, everyone. I think it's my pleasure to introduce myself. I'm Devendra, right, from Singapore Press Holdings, and I've spent more than a decade on building digital data and tech platforms that have generated massive increase in traffic and revenue. And I have a diverse experience in the the ecosystem. Worked with media agencies on the brand side, from there to tech side, ad tech platform, and then now currently working with the supply side of the publisher sides. So it's a great pleasure to be a part of this discussion today. Back to you, Kevin.
Thanks, Dev. Next up, we have John Thankamoni from Dentsu. John.
Thanks, Kevin. Thanks, Kevin. Hi, everyone. I'm John Thankamoni from Dentsu. I'm a client partner there working with some of our leading clients across media, creative, and CRM as well. Have been in the programmatic space for quite a few years, has seen the evolution of different forms of working with data and playing with data over the last 10 years. It's definitely been a very, very interesting space, and I'm sure it'll continue to evolve. Thank you.
Thank you, John. And then we have another representative from the publisher side. Rika, how are you doing? How's Hong Kong?
Hi, Kevin. Thanks. Yep, Hong Kong is great, cold a little bit. My name's Rika Robbenheimer. I'm the digital product manager at the South China Morning Post. I lead the commercial data strategy and digital insights for advertising. I'm really honored to be here today and of course share my thoughts and experience coming from a global Asian publisher's perspective, especially having recently launched our own proprietary first-party platform called Lighthouse in preparation for the post-cookie world. So keen to start the discussions.
Excellent. Thanks, Rika. And last but not least, we have Pavel joining us from the Czech Republic. Pavel's the CMO at Meiro. Hi, Pavel.
Hello. Oh,
hello.
There's a camera. Cool. Hi, Gavin. Hi, guys.
Hi.
Good early morning from Prague. I was asked to show a piece of snow. It was heavy snowing overnight, but unfortunately, I can't move my setup to bring you guys with me out of the window. So trust me, it's really cold out there. Super excited to be able to take part in this conversation today. It's super well put together panel, like Gavin said, with everyone from the corners of advertising to agencies to brand side to publisher. So it's really, really interesting. My angle and what we do with Meiro is obviously revolves around first-party data, its management, building repository, and mostly its utilization. And obviously, we believe that this is a big part of the answer for the post-cookie world. So really excited for the conversation today.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Well, I suppose I better introduce myself. So I'm Gavin. Hello. So my background's predominantly publishing. So I started my career in media about 11 years ago in print on one of Scotland's broadsheets, the Herald. Then moved on to the Drum, who sent me to Asia, where I've kind of found myself for the last 3.5 years, but laterally working more with programmatic activations, digital out of home, and CDP deployment. Yeah, so that's me. Okay, so if everybody's ready, I'm ready. I've got my cookie for a snack during the panel to keep it topical. But before we ask the esteemed panel some questions, what I'd like to do is quickly poll the audience. As in, if you could help me with the poll, that would be amazing. Here it is. So you might recognize this little bit of text. So we use cookies to tailor your experience, measure site performance, present relevant advertisements. By clicking the accept button, you agree that cookies can be placed in accordance with our privacy policy. So when you see this, everybody, do you smash the like button? Sorry, not like button, the accept button, or do you decline? If you can decline, because you can't always decline. I'd be really interested to hear what you vote. So I'll give you a few seconds to vote yes or no. I'll have a sip of my coffee. Okay. The poll is in. Wow. Okay, I thought it'd be a higher, actually, on yes there. So that's interesting. Quite a high number of no's. Obviously, everybody's very, very cautious of what they do with their data. Thank you, everybody. That's great. Amazing. Okay, right. So now,
Gavin, I'm curious.
Yes.
You said you thought this number would be higher. Why do you think that is? Are we in the advertising special social bubble here where people actually read stuff, which is not like what your mom does, you know? Or
that's what I was thinking on myself, actually, sometimes. Actually. So I was just thinking that people just want to get to the content as quick as possible. and just will get rid of any pop-up, any box, just so they can get to the juicy content. That was my thinking. Yeah, but you're right. It might be because maybe in our industry there's more cautiousness, should I say? Yeah.
Probably.
Good question. Yeah. Okay, so before we ask you, well, I think the first thing we'll do a bit of role playing, guys. So we'll ask you to think as consumers. So I'll ask this first to Dev, I think. So, okay, hold on 1 second. So as a consumer, Dev, how much of your data and information are you willing to share with advertisers online?
I think as a consumer, I'm okay to share maybe an anonymous ID, right? A cookie ID, right?
Yeah.
You can, and some basic information like my short name, right? Not my full name, but just my short name. And prefer not to share my personal info. I think I'm sharing the same sentiments as the audience here, right? Until unless a brand's advertiser really incentivize me, right, with something, right? Because working in the ad tech industry, I always try to test various grounds and scenarios that using my own data on the internet, like social media and websites, so that the advertisers really do not target me for irrelevant ads, right? They only target me with the relevant ads, right? So I always try to share the information to the brands, advertisers, where I really think that I'm get some kind of benefit from them. Yeah, so that's my personal preferences. Yeah.
It's kind of a trade-off.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Rika, same question to you.
Yeah, well, I am open to sharing my data as well, and not just like thinking about with the advertiser hat on, but it comes down to, what value is that website bringing to me in my like day-to-day. So if I think about what I do online, I shop online. So if I want to track my purchases, I want to make sure that I'm giving them legitimate information. And if I want to have, like proper personalization, because it does get annoying to, get advertisements that are not relevant to you. And I feel like, in fact, they should add more options for us to give, to express what type of advertisements we're into. And yeah, I think it comes down to value and what you're doing with that platform.
Yeah, amazing, thanks. And Pavel, same question to you.
So this is really an interesting one, and to me this is almost from everything we discuss here today, which is mostly technical, this is probably the most philosophical one, and I really like it. I kind of find two parts. Two parts. I think I need to sorry, answer here. So first. I feel that my relationship with brand and a publisher per se or advertiser is different in terms of how much data I'm willing to share. If I'm interacting with a brand, I would like the brand to know as much about me as they possibly can, because that means better customer experience for me. That means not having to search through web stores if it's tailored and personalized to content I like and I consume, right? So I think from that perspective, definitely a lot. Where I struggle a bit is, again, knowing and having the understanding of the advertising world a little bit more than an average person on the internet. I am maybe not so comfortable with my data being sold and resold and repackaged without me knowing. If it comes down to a direct relationship with a medium where I'm exchanging my data for or my advertising attention for content, no problem with that. A little bit of a problem of my data being used in places and being repackaged multiple times without me having an access to that information. So that's probably how I would wrap it up.
Yeah, it makes sense. So you're fine if it makes your life easier and it's a direct relationship, but when that data starts getting down, getting sold, getting passed on to other partners, and not so happy.
That retention and the other commercials around it are a little bit fuzzy for me, and maybe not so comfortable. Yeah.
Gotcha. And John, same question.
Yeah, I think a lot of the points were covered, but I think a lot of it really comes down to utility, because if you think like 15 years ago when we started giving our data to such digital platforms like 15 odd years ago, it really came down to utility. You didn't really think about the legalities. There was a legal document, but you pretty much said, yes, I'll sign it because I want to chat with someone, or, I want to post pictures online and things like that. And I think the average consumer thought that way for a long time, until probably Cambridge Analytica, et cetera, et cetera. So I think consumer education itself on data is changing. Like the questions people are asking is changing. So in terms of today versus 10 years ago, I wouldn't have even thought about it twice. Like I would just give it. I think today I'm still very open with my data, knowing all the ways it can be used, because I think it comes down to utility. So if you want to participate and you want to get utility from something, or let's say you're on Facebook, or you're on TikTok, or whatever it is, there is a certain agreement there, and you get something out of it. So I think it's down to every consumer that way.
Yeah, good point. Thanks, John. So, and thanks for taking part in that little role play. So as consumers. Okay, and so now we get on with some of the questions we had. So I think this question's for Rika. Okay, so Rika, do you think consumers understand what they're signing for under the content mechanisms being used today? So do you think consumers actually understand what they're saying okay to or yes to as a whole?
Yeah. Yeah, I think what everyone else is kind of saying earlier as well, like right now, users are generally more aware of how their data is used. It's hard not to when it's all that you're hearing in the news, especially with the recent scandals that are unfolded, because this for sure has prompted many users, but not everyone, to take that step in understanding what they're signing up for. But whether they have actually understood it correctly or not, it's a different story. And I think that if we're going to move forward in our industry, well, at least from our side as like data collectors, right, as publishers, then we need to take that like extra step to help make it easier for users to understand it better as well. So we play a really important role in that understanding, because that's a major factor in building the consumer trust. So if you can communicate that value exchange, then you will have a better chance in building a stronger relationship with your customers online.
Yeah, totally. Same question to Pavel. Do you want me to read the question again?
No, that's good. It's good. I'm just really like lost in thoughts on the answer. Look, I think when you look at specifically I'm going down to the cookie consent mechanisms that we see right now, right, on the websites. I see there is a fair comparison to terms and conditions of the apps you are installing. So there is obviously fatigue and blindness to that. So it's fulfilling a legal purpose, but not necessarily a practical one, because it's something that has to be there. Yet users simply don't read it. Again, geeks like us can probably do that. I think a couple of years ago, I developed a cookie fetish. I used to go around different websites and I look at everything that tracks me, right? So like, as you do. So I think that's a slightly different case than a normal person, and really not having that bias, that industry bias, is important here. But I think what has to change is the mechanics of how this is deployed, and I think naturally the ecosystem will force it. I think good comparison probably there is the location, when the in-app location tracking that's been also changed by the players like Google Android, right? That's something that's been given, like your apps are tracking your location. Now there's actual conversation which really you have to go through with your phone when you are installing an app or when you are launching an app, if it's tracking you all the time, now only when using the app in the background and all of that. So you can't almost avoid that. And again, yes, it's a little bit worse UX. You don't go to your article that you've clicked on Facebook right away, but I think some type of a slightly different user experience for this has to develop and will develop inevitably. Otherwise, I don't think it's really fulfilling the purpose, because consumers are simply trying to get to the content the fastest, so they are ignoring it almost purposefully.
Yeah, thanks, Pavel. That's great. And next question, I'll push this one out to Dev. So Dev, which solutions are becoming serious contenders, do you think, for targeting in this new world we find ourselves in? This is a good question.
If you're muted.
Oh yeah, Dev, you're muted.
Sorry, I think I'm
No, no worries.
okay. In my opinion, I guess many solutions are the horizon right now. I think, but I think just few of them, right? You see a lot of noise in the industry, right? I think they are, I think, universal ID and privacy, solutions. Along with, the other one is, customer data platform and contextual targeting solutions, I guess, right? So these are like a typical, famous solutions out there. Like you'll see a lot of noise in the entire industry, right? So a universal ID, like provides basically a shared identity, across various users across the supply side, right? With the use of cookies, without the use of cookies, basically, right? And whereas the CDP and contextual targeting solution allows for like a hyper personalization ads by using various keywords, selected topics, location, browsing habits, and other factors. So I guess it's all can be accomplished by using just like fast first party data, I think, right? So which the brands are now planning to basically collect rather than relying on the third party data. I think, yeah, that's my opinion. Over to you, Gavin.
Thank you. No, great answer. Actually, so you mentioned first party data, so I'd be remiss if I didn't ask Rika the same question. I think I know the answer to this one, but you may express.
Sure. About to the same question, I think obviously the deprecation of cookies will for sure disrupt the way that marketers operate today, because yes, there are things like retargeting, frequency capping, and cross-platform tracking will be difficult, and it will make it more challenging to move customers down the marketing funnel. So they would need to rethink how they address their customers across multiple touch points. And you can't really have a one-size-fits-all approach in advertising, right? Because users behave differently across different channels. And I think that going forward, advertisers will need to invest in more like direct relationships with publishers, more time and resources, and also understanding who their core audiences are based on their own channels, and using those insights as like the foundation of how you form relationships with your partners to ensure you're reaching the right audiences on their channels.
Great. Thank you so much. And okay, so next, so yeah, so this one's for John. So John, how much first party data do advertisers typically have beyond cookies normally? For example, do normal advertisers have enough email data on their users to scale campaigns? And do they have enough data to ensure that targeted campaigns are going to be commercially interesting for the sell side?
Yeah, I think just
Long question.
before we get into that, I think to the point that Devendra made, there's a lot of different purposes for which advertisers need this data, right? And it's not always necessarily targeting, but there's also analytics, there's measurement, and there's a lot of things that will be challenged with the death of the third-party cookie, but also Apple restricting what they can do from a ID perspective and things like that. So there's a lot of challenges being faced. There are some solutions being put in place, right? Some of these solutions are being driven by the walled gardens. You've got your Facebooks and Googles and Apples. They're all kind of developing their own solutions. Typically, their solutions work very well within their realms. And then there's also a lot of what you want to do, either if you want to go to them or if you want to work in the open environment with publishers, relevant publishers in your markets, etc. In that space, it's very critical, obviously, to have your own first-party data and collect it and not depend on an external system and say that, okay, I'll gather all my data in one of these giants or another, just focus on pixel data, but rather bring in your own email and phone data. what has happened over the years is you've had a lot of advertisers who are in spaces like travel, finance, all those categories where you actually gave your information freely. They've been gathering that. They have a wealth of that information, and they've been moving quite fast. We've got quite a few advertisers as well who have moved on in each of the, I would say, over the last 10 years through the evolutions, through DMPs, through CDPs, etc. It's a challenge for advertisers who are in like FMCG categories and categories where consumers aren't necessarily handing over their data to you, like their emails. You're not buying soap and handing over like your email or phone number, right? So how do you actually tackle that? This is a challenge, and that's where it's really a lot of advertisers are now putting effort into building value systems, value exchange systems. Like you provide content, like you've got Red Bull is a great example. You provide great content, and people are ready to sign up for that and be to participate in that, and so they're willing to give up the data for that. So I think that is where advertisers will really need to focus on. Like they'll need to figure what is it that they need from a first-party data perspective, and then how will they actually get it basis their product group.
Any comments from anybody else?
Yeah, if I can jump in a bit. It's a great answer, John. I think we could just spend another hour developing just this argument really easily. So that it's really on point. I think you've slightly touched a couple super important points. So the walled gardens, right? Like this is one of the really big issues, and I think that the walled gardens itself are an argument for publishers and advertisers to be really building out their first-party data repository. That's simply an asset. I think first-party data is something that should be showing up on a P&L of a company and in evaluation of a business, to be honest. And I think we will see that in future. I think you mentioned it's the last bit you mentioned about how brands are using it is there's often a little bit of lack of education, since this space is fairly new. We can't, and we see that in our daily practice on every single day basis, is that we can't expect the brands and advertisers to know how to use it if they don't know what they even have or what they can have, because they are not using it the right way and structuring it. And I think there is two big value points. One is about connecting the dots from the across the entire ecosystem. So if your consumer might behave one way or on the website, but they behave really differently in a store, very common. So unless you are putting all of this into one picture, that's you're missing out on the kind of the complexity of that personality. A second bit on that is on how do you activate it. Is again, as a brand, you have an omni-channel experience typically, and if that data fundamental piece you don't have ready in the first place, you really cannot fulfill that. And the world of the kind of consumer choice isn't really getting smaller. Like the brand touch points are expanding. So it's really many things beyond website. So that's I think that's also one dynamic changing thing in the ecosystem. Last comment here, you mentioned a bit on how difficult it is for some brands to obtain even the direct consumer data. I think you mentioned FMCG, so we've got a great example of that. And I think it's more, you have to look at more the product interaction or the service interaction rather than just the transactional, because if you are selling baby formula, obviously most people will be buying it from 7-Eleven or Watson's. So that's not there's the relationship is indirect. I think there are two answers to that. It's a product engagement. So a lot of brands we're working with do have really good customer engagement post-purchase. registering, kind of tying it into loyalty, tying it into product information. Decathlon does this really well. You just register your phone number with your purchase, and you don't have to keep your receipts for whenever you want to return something. So for warranty, so it's really, really practical value for a consumer. And again, you get the full history of the customer purchase, and again, identifiable contact information you can use in targeting and advertising, in reaching out back to them. So I think that's super valuable. There are ways, but obviously this is an expert field like any other, and it's not something that brands can just jump in directly. So it's a really evolving very quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. I think agreed on those points. I think to the FMCG point, it's tougher, but I think the FMCG brands that I've worked with are usually the ones that who have the most, I would say, advanced, comprehensive reach out programs, because they don't necessarily always go direct to consumer. They're obviously working on programs. I think there's a lot of evolution. That's why the content example was just one. But there's a lot of ways around which brands are actually getting to the end consumer. The idea is, of course, definitely the fact that you have to get to the end consumer if you're a brand in today's age.
Absolutely. I think e-commerce is spoiled in this place because they have all of their data handy easily, right?
Telcos as well. Yeah. I suppose until brands do kind of, get their act together in certain respects, publishers can help a great deal. Dev and Rika, I mean, if you're creating amazing buckets of first-party data, I'm sure marketers and agencies wouldn't mind paying a premium if you're helping them get to exactly the right audience. And I suppose in terms of scale, though, it might involve working together to a certain degree to kind of compete with the size and scale of the walled gardens.
Absolutely, I think, Gavin. I totally agree with you, I guess, because competing with the walled garden, I think, will not be an easy game here because they are quite ahead, right? Because the recent couple of years, they're already in the fire, right? So they have already built those kind of ecosystem and various solutions. But again, the outside walled gardens, the publishers, the small publishers, the big publishers, I think it's time for them to come together and work together, basically, right? Right from it could be consent tracking system, where various consents can be tracked, commonly in a central place, and it can be used across various publishers rather than every publisher basically have a consent tracking system for each audience, right? It could be an ecosystem within the publishers, right? Even right now, from there to universal IDs, right? Sharing IDs, anonymous IDs, right? Replacing basically cookies with that, and have that ecosystem, right? That's where they can operate. I think that will also help the ad tech platforms and providers, right, to plug in their solutions with the publisher networks. I think that's my opinion for this one.
Yeah, but I also want to cautious, I guess, like both marketers and publishers, not to think about like the walled gardens as like the main competition, because there's definitely like not going to be a possibility where publishers can compete with the walled gardens. But then you have to kind of elevate like your value proposition as a brand, as a publisher, and also understand like users, like digital users, have different behaviors across different channels, and that's what like the essence of the data that you're capturing. It's like, us as publishers, we're able to talk about like what our audiences are doing when they're on our site, and that's a different experience when they're on the social media channels. Correct.
Yeah, great point. I think I might chuck in a question from the audience. So we've got a question here from Domi Vamba. So what they've asked is, given the situation of the retirement of third-party cookies, do you think customers will start using more of their own data, and the DMPs will really lose space to CDPs? So I think what they're saying is, will DMPs lose out to CDPs? Anybody can jump in for that question.
Yeah, I can take that to start off with it. But I think definitely over the next 2-3 years, advertisers and brands will have to have a very, very good look at what they're doing from a data perspective, like what kind of data they're collecting, where they're collecting it. And that's kind of the first thing. From a lot of the surveys that we've seen, advertisers feel they're kind of ready for the next 2 years in all the changes that they're coming for. But in terms of, they need to understand the impact, and they need to understand what tech might have to be replaced, if they need new tech, if they need for their data collection practices and things like that. So with regards to DMPs itself, a lot of third-party data over the next 2 years is projected to be affected. So CDPs are definitely a lot more relevant in this time, because they're obviously connected into different channels. They're able to activate, provide insights, provide the connectivity that you need as a brand and as a publisher too. So that's what I would say from a brand perspective, at least.
Thank you so much. And I hope that answers your question, Dominic. Thanks for asking.
Gavin, if I may develop that a bit, totally align again with John. I know I hate being on panels where I just say that I agree with everyone, because but you know, this is it's intelligent answer. So really, I have to say that. I think you know, from our perspective, being a CDP vendor, we've seen especially in Asia that DMP is kind of competing with our space already. It's a difficult sell, because DMP is based on storing anonymized information. So it's really, if you look at the consumer, I mean, it's a really, very, very different use case. And I think it's been mostly understood as not as an audience management for brands, as a first-party audience management. It's been understood as a tool that helps you to enlarge and reach new interest-based audiences, right? And that's in direct that's directly clashing with the idea of managing first-party data and understand your consumers well, because these are anonymous cookie masses. And I think there's not just the cookie demise; it's also the what Apple did in app space, removing the IDFA. Again, I can, Dome Azrin, if I can ask you guys to pop the article into the chat. It's interesting for a lot of people here. What happened is obviously removing the identifier that's used for advertising remarketing. Identification, obviously, it's the equivalent of cookies going away from the app space. So essentially, DMPs are losing a quality of the data very, very quickly, and it's very short-lived, and honestly, it's empty. I think what I observe, and now I really I'm based in Europe, so I'm kind of immersed in both markets. Southeast Asia as well as Europe. I think I see the difference is that brands have moved on understanding this strategically from DMPs a long time ago. Like, DMP is not a conversation when we go talk to brands here. It has not been for a couple of years at this point. So I think this is understood. I think it's a really tough space for DMP. I would not want to be a DMP vendor at this time, because the job a CDP does, the inner workings of it are really very different. Like, you're looking at technology for cleaning data. It's very data integration oriented. There are technology for identity graph. So putting together the identity of your consumer, which is really not a copying different tabs in Excel. You know, it's a very difficult analytical work. So I think that it's a difficult space, and we are definitely going to see I would say rapid decline, but of DMPs. But that might be maybe a bit biased again from where I'm sitting as a CDP vendor, but yeah, definitely a dynamic space for sure.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Great. Okay, so I'm conscious time is ticking. So what I'd like to do now is, this is going to be a question for all the panelists. I'd like each of you to just think about 2 pieces of advice you would give to marketers. So I suppose, Pavel, you have to think of advice you'd give to other marketers and what they need to think about in 2021. So if you'd each just give 2 brief bits of advice, that would be amazing. And let's kick off with Rika.
Sure. Okay. 2 pieces of advice. Well, the first, obviously, like the topic of today, embracing your first-party data. It's important, but where it ultimately comes down to is where and how you take advantage of those data sets. So first party data to you is important to understanding your core audience and having a base understanding of your customers and how they interact with your brand will serve as a foundation for, and like how you determine which partners to work with and how you work with those partners, which brings me to my next piece of advice, which is to really take time for marketers to understand your partners' first party data strategy as well, and to like demand transparency and quality. Do you have the same definition of the audience groups that they've segmented? And if not, like, how can you build a relationship to experiment and grow that audience together? Ask as many questions if they have the right tools to capture the data signals and attributes that you need. And most importantly, like, understand what solutions do they have now and how will that evolve in the future? Like, what's in their pipeline and how will that affect your relationship with that partner? Because we are in an ever evolving industry.
Yes, completely. Great. Thank you so much, Rika. Pavel, what would your advice be? Your two pieces of advice.
Yeah, happy to. So my first advice would be to have a data strategy, specifically a first-party data strategy in place. If you already do, make sure it's relevant in this super fast-changing world, especially the sort of the post-cookie, post mobile app ID situation. So that's something that if you've put that into your data team mission statement 2 years ago may not be relevant today. So I would say visit that. Obviously, echoing what Rika said is very, very, very on point. And second bit would be have a look at your own attribution. Again, seeing the experience in Europe, a lot of brands are trying to investing into doing their own and not relying on the big ecosystem. We've seen it many, many times over. You're looking at 100 conversions, 100 purchases on the website. You look, Google reports 70, Facebook reports 80. You still have only 100. So clearly something is off in this place. So I think this is, again, and induced by the changes in the cookies. Obviously, Facebook is struggling with attribution massively, so that would be invest into your own analytical capability, just so you can decide for yourself, and you have the data to do it. Not necessarily that you have to build an analytical solution in-house, but you should not be relying on the people who are spending your advertising money to be the judge of how effective it is. So that would be my advice specifically on advertising.
Thank you so much, Pavel. And Devendra, over to you.
Thanks, Gavin. I think my advice will be, again, revolves around the current situation we have, the pandemic and the death of cookie, right? So I think the world will never be the same, right? And we'll have to adapt a new normal, right? And I think people will continue to rely on, again, on digital platforms like e-commerce, right? And we'll see more brands, offering contactless interactions, across various industries. So I think the major change for 2020 will be a positive shift in the way brands embrace technology, and to also look at and support and empower the various marketer teams, right, within that company. So an effective digital strategy, I think it's the most important for allow marketers to reach out more customers, engage them with existing fans, and an increased website traffic, I think. And then personalized marketing, I think, will be also an important role in the 2021. To replace the face-to-face value, right, that many business have now lost, basically, right? So I think I will see more video marketing, I think, particularly when communicating to potential buyers, right? So I think this will also be a differentiator among the competitors, right? And companies that will that can build relationships and stay connected virtually, right, to their audience will be very much important, during this pandemic time. So I think that's my two piece of advice. Over to you, Gavin.
Thank you so much. Lastly, John.
Right. Thank you. Yeah, it's always tough once all three people have taken all the good points, but thanks.
I did it from the images positions from the bottom. So there's no...
Good order. Good order. I think. Thanks for that. I think the first thing definitely is to understand the impact, and there's a lot of changes going on. There are legal changes. You've got your GDPR, which everyone knows by now, 2 years old, the impact, etc. there's CCPA coming, and a lot of countries in Asia itself are starting to put in their own laws, extras. And then, of course, all the platforms are reacting to that. Technology is changing. From an advertiser standpoint, a lot of things are actually changing from a measurement standpoint. So you don't actually know what your ROI is compared to earlier. So if you got an ROI earlier that was, 10x, you can't actually, 3 years ago, you can't say the same based on the measurement systems that you have today. So you have to kind of evolve, and you have to take leadership, I would say, and say this is how we want to put in place like a framework on how you want to approach this. It will be different. It's not going to be the same. There is no, move out a block and put in a new block and everything will be fine. It's going to be completely different. So be ready for that. I think that's the first, really, and understand that, educate everyone on your teams. The second is start planning based on the impact, how you actually want to respond. How do you start owning more data? How do you work with your partners? How do you work with the wall gardens who are really still very relevant? How do you work with publishers? How do you work with others in the ecosystem? How do you work with content producers? And so it's a lot of people actually who need to come in to understand what goes on there, whether it's people from your marketing teams, from your product teams who actually understand what your product needs, people who understand your roadmap from an advertiser standpoint, your legal teams who know what the legalities of collecting data, keeping data, using it in certain ways when it comes to partnering with different entities, whether it's platforms or publishers, etc. So I think plan for that in a big way and get more people involved. Don't go in alone. Make it comprehensive, because everyone needs to be on board to actually learn about the change that's coming.
Yeah, cool. So a lot to think about.
Very cool. Guys, just been skimming through the questions we are getting on the chat. There are really, really good questions, and we are running so out of time. So unfortunately, I don't think we can take them. But what I would like to do is, so our sort of for today back office guys for my marketing team, if you can guys take these questions down, and we'll try to answer them collectively in an offline form, maybe in an article that we will follow up with, and we'll make sure we try to answer these because they are really good questions.
Yeah,
and I think from fingerprinting to server-side tracking to remarketing and how is that going to change, so all really well pointed. But I've got one question that is something that Rika prompted before already, and I would love to make sure that we get this answered. Because I think this is really a strategic thing going forward. Rika, you mentioned about kind of rising prominence going forward of the direct relationship from advertisers to publishers. I'm curious, what is that going to look like? And I would like to hear from Dev and you specifically on what's that mechanically going to look like in future. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I'll start first. So I think for us, well, for publishers who have the infrastructure, the resources to, already move into like the first party data game, right? For us, this goes back all the way to 2 years ago before all of the cookie apocalypse started coming down on us. And I think just being ready to, move forward with a solution for partners where you're able to, create first party cookie relationships or first party data relationships with, building up our authenticated user base. That was like the first step that we took as a publisher. Second is like moving towards enhancing the platform that we currently have to allow our partners to track the users down the funnel. So move them down to conversion to, engage with their loyal audience on our platform. So that's really important. But it comes back to having that infrastructure. So that means like getting your audit of the first party data sets that you have, creating a tool, like the tool that shows the insights on those audience. And then afterwards, building that reporting, the transparency that shows the reporting on like how can they engage and re-engage their users when they can no longer do that in the future in the open marketplace. So it is a big undertaking for any publisher, big or small. But yeah, I think it's just a matter of whether that publisher will have the right resources invested in that direction.
Yeah, I think I totally agree with Rika. I think as you mentioned, right? I think every publisher, even a small or a big publisher, I think they are moving definitely from DMP or third-party data collection from there to first-party data, right? I think that's the strategy every publisher is right now trying to adopt. I think as Rika also mentioned, I think having a strong foundation and a background technology, tech products, underlying products, right, to collect and enrich this first party data. I think that's the game I think every publisher would like to play, right? Enrich this first party data, right? So moving from DMP to could be CDP, where just not looking data for the brands and advertisers, also looking how we can use data for our own internal efficiencies, right? From understanding our customers, understanding various touch points, how we are interact and engage them, right? So that how we can bring value back to our advertisers. I think that's where the most of the focus right now from the publisher side. Also looking at right from the digital channels to offline channels, right? How you can connect and bring that omni-channel experience for the advertisers, right? So to bring that value back again to the ROI for the advertisers, right? Not just looking at digital platforms, right? So example for Singapore Press Holdings, right? We operate in various media channels, right? So right from print to radio to outdoor, right? So how you basically tied all those various media channels to digital, right? And have that ecosystem, and that really brings value back to give value back to the advertisers. I think that's where I think the most of the transformation I think is going on, and I think it's pretty much the same for each and every advertisers I think around the region.
Very cool. I think like if I kind of play the other side of the table for you for now as a marketer who has even though very small advertising budget to spend.
Lots of role playing.
yeah, role play. When I hear that, I would be probably the first worry that would come to my mind, a concern would be how scalable is this and for the publishers, and if it's not very scalable, I would be worried about rising cost. I think that would probably be the first, and fairly uneducated on my part on understanding exactly how your business works in this new realm. That would probably be your concern. Do you think you can still deliver the same value or higher when in this new way as a publishers?
I think on the cost part, it is quite the opposite, where when you have more direct relationships, but then you're taking intermediaries out of the picture, or like having less of those unnecessary relationships, which is why it's also important for the publishers to bring in like resources that maybe everyone else was so reliant on having like 3 or 4 different partners just to get all those reporting under like one platform. So I think that's an important investment for many publishers to start considering, and for marketers to look at as well when they're considering those partnerships.
Great.
Perfect sense. Yeah, thank you.
I think we can squeeze in a couple more questions, can't we? Seems to be a lot of people still here, which is great. So thank you for hanging around. The question here from Mohammed Hazwan Fakiri Mo. Sorry, there's not a space for the whole names. I apologize. You know who you are. So yeah, he's asked, given the situation, will this highly impact affiliate marketing? So what he's asking is, so what will be the future strategies if you're working in the affiliate marketing space? It's an interesting one, because that's going to have repercussions, I think.
So I think this is going a bit outside of the, I guess, the publisher advertiser realm we are, I think, mostly discussing here today. But I think it's going to look, it all comes down to the same challenge. It's the identifiability, if that's a word, I might have just invented it, of the user and the traffic. Like you're having the same problem in affiliate space. It's attribution problem ultimately. So if Facebook is struggling with attribution of their ad campaigns from not seeing conversions on your Safari browser 3 days later after you've visited a site from an ad, then affiliate is seeing same problem, and I would probably foresee some type of a mirroring of the solutions we will see in ad space, because in affiliate, and simply with a bit of a delay, and simply because in terms of dollar value and size, the affiliate space is significantly smaller than the ad space. So there's just a lot more investment being driven here. I think that would be my one sentence answer. Thanks,
Pavel, appreciate it. We've actually have a great question from an anonymous attendee, which I want to read out. Because I think it's quite interesting. So the anonymous attendee has asked, any opinions about browser fingerprinting, where you can actually see individual users based on their add-ons, their fonts, their screen size, all that kind of stuff. So it gives a really quite a accurate individual ID, as it were. Any thoughts on fingerprinting?
So I can start on that. I think one of the things is obviously from all of these norms and legalities being put in place to protect the individual privacy and to protect the consumer. So I think one of the points that has been raised continuously is that browser fingerprinting doesn't really essentially fulfill that purpose.
Quite dodgy.
And it continues to kind of work on some of the older principles. So I think it might be there. I'm not sure how scaled it will be across the board and how relevant a solution. I think it's definitely there, and it might evolve. At this point, I think the answer from a consumer standpoint definitely looks a little questionable. And as more and more countries and companies start, cleaning up and making it more consumer friendly, it might not be as relevant. That's my take on it.
Thanks, John.
If I can add on to that, from consumer perspective, it sounds super shady, and I think it's just an unfortunate word, because it sounds like some type of a CIA tactic. Yet we track all of metadata in browsers anyway. So I mean, it's not as bad as it sounds. I think the issue with it is still a probabilistic identity, and that's a problem. That's a problem I have with that, practically on the brand on the tracker side, not the tracked side. And I think the answer to that is simply native tracking. Look, when we deploy our tech, it's built for the reality we are facing today, and we will see in a year. And when we deploy tracking on websites of our clients, it's native tracking. It doesn't send the data outside of its domain, so it doesn't get blocked by privacy browsers, and it's perfectly within all legal and ethical frameworks. So first-party native tracking, long cookies, renewable up to 2 years, and renewable. I think that's the answer. You don't need fingerprinting. Fingerprinting is kind of a third-party approach. So no need for that anymore.
Thank you, Pavel.
Yeah, I agree with Pavel. I guess it's maybe like a short-term solution, right, to move away from third-party. No, but I think the long-term solution would be, again, collecting the first-party and deterministic data, right? Again, if the brands or publishers still want to continue using the MPs, right, and enrich their data, I think they should continue with the fingerprinting, moving from third-party to fingerprinting. But again, as John mentioned, I think the question here is how they want to scale it up, right, and integrate the other outside ecosystem. I think that's the key here. So my opinion, I think, is like move out right from fingerprinting if you're also trying to look at fingerprinting to first-party data. Yeah.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, guys. Well, I think it's getting close to 3:10. We should probably think about wrapping it up, but really appreciate all your guys' input. It's been an amazing panel. I think some of the key takeaways is you need to strategize, have a strategy for first-party data as a brand and as a publisher. Choose tech partners carefully and choose the right ones. But yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting year if indeed everything happens in the timescale that we've been given. Any final comments from anybody else before we wrap up?
I think just thank you to the audience. We have 100 people with us until the very end of it.
Amazing.
So
yeah,
it's great. And thanks for the panelists. Thank you guys for making time. It was amazing. I really love the conversation. I look forward to the write-up, and we'll be reaching out to everyone who registered and the 100-something people who
I'll
came
send the
today.
recording as well.
Yeah.
Thanks to the moderator. Thanks, Gavin.
Yeah, thanks to Meiro and She Loves Data for having us as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Cheers, guys.
Thank you, guys. Sorry, I was just gonna say, don't worry, this is not like a cookie apocalypse. It's not the end of the world, but it's an opportunity for everyone. So take this opportunity with positivity, because this is going to move our industry forward.
Good positive finish there. I'm gonna have a cookie.
Great closing.
Thanks, Meiro. Thanks,
Thank you,
Gavin.
guys.
Thank you for your time today. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Good one.
Bye-bye.